Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm your host, Neil Howard, and we're going to be having a conversation with Rami Levin this morning. He's president and CEO of Saniona. He's joining us to talk about Tesomet. It's the first and only investigational treatment for hypothalamic obesity, or HO. It just received Orphan drug designation from the FDA. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Rami, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
Now, as president and CEO of Saniona, give us a bit of your professional background briefly and talk about how you became president and CEO of Saniona and what the mission is there.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in the pharma industry for over 25 years. I worked in a variety of different companies in a variety of different countries. My most recent role before joining Saniona as the CEO, I was the president of Sobi in North America. Sobi is a global rare disease company with headquarters in Stockholm, Sweden, and I basically built the North American organization. After 6 years at Saniona, I decided to join, at Sobi, I decided to join Saniona as a CEO. Right at the time where Saniona started to think, how do we enter the U.S. market? How do we advance our lead asset, Tesomet, into kind of mid-late stage clinical development? And what does that look like? And the board basically made a strategic decision at that stage, and that was about a year and a half ago, January of last year when I joined, after the board decided that it's time to change the executive team, starting with the CEO, and bring someone who, on one hand, has a lot more commercial experience, has brought rare disease products to the market, but is also based here in the U.S., considering the fact that Saniona originated in Denmark, in Scandinavia, and the company wanted to start building its capabilities and team here in the U.S. closer to the largest rare disease market in the world. And that's basically when I started about a year ago, January last year, year and a half ago.
Now, I did mention, of course, that Tesomet is the first and only investigational treatment for HO. What is hypothalamic obesity, and what are some of the symptoms, and how does it affect those who are living with it?
A great question. So hypothalamic obesity is a rare neuroendocrine disorder. It's most commonly caused by damage to an area in the brain called hypothalamus. And this damage is usually sustained during or after a removal of a rare brain tumor called craniopharyngioma, which is a rare non-cancerous central nervous system tumor. Now, this damage to the hypothalamus can cause, as a result of that, it can cause rapid, excessive, and intractable weight gain. It can cause uncontrollable hunger. It can cause memory impairment, attention deficit. It can cause excessive daytime sleepiness. It can cause issues with impulse control and even in some cases, depression. And these patients that do have HO, and this is an acquired disorder, in some cases, it could also increase the risk of developing obesity-related comorbid conditions such as type 2 diabetes, such as hypertension, stroke, and in some cases, even heart failure. And unfortunately, at least today, there are no FDA-approved treatments for hypothalamic obesity.
With no treatments for this, how much of a burden on caregivers? Is it normal for caregivers to just tough it out with these patients? What is the normal course for caregivers?
Well, of course, it's a tremendous burden on caregivers. You can imagine, because it's an acquired disorder and not a genetic one, many of these patients typically are normal, healthy, active people up until when they had or have the brain tumor, and that brain tumor is removed. And then within a very short period of time, within a year, these patients can become obese. So, within a very short period of time, they can be normal, active people and then suddenly obese. So you can obviously understand the burden that it is not only on the patients, but on the caregivers as well. And typically these patients are either, children, adolescents, or adults. So obviously a huge burden on families.
As far as Tesomet is concerned, what phase of testing are you in, and what is this compound?
Sure. So Tesomet indeed is an investigational fixed-dose combination therapy of two molecules. The first one is tesofensine, which is a triple monoamine reuptake inhibitor. And the second one is metoprolol, which is a beta blocker. That combo therapy is Tesomet. It is the first and only treatment that received Orphan drug designation for hypothalamic obesity. And the tesofensine component within Tesomet is a novel proprietary molecule that we developed. It is designed to block the reabsorption of three key monoamines that play a key role in hypothalamic obesity, and those are serotonin, noradrenaline, and dopamine. And in turn, by blocking them, what we do is we reduce the craving for food, we reduce the appetite, and we increase the metabolic fat burn. Mm-hmm. And what we have shown in a phase 2 trial with hypothalamic obesity is that Tesomet did in fact lead to statistically significant reduction in body weight, as well as improvements in waist circumference, glycemic control, and other parameters as well.
Tesomet just received Orphan drug designation for HO. What does this mean for Saniona and for the HO community as a whole?
Absolutely. So first I'll say, of course, at Saniona, we are extremely proud to pioneer the regulatory path forward for people living with HO. And we are thrilled to have received the first ever FDA Orphan drug designation for this indication. Orphan drug designation is a special status granted by the FDA for medicines or biologics that are intended to treat rare disease patients. The definition for rare disease patients here in the U.S. is any indication that has fewer than 200,000 patients in the U.S. For HO, it's estimated that in the U.S. there are somewhere between 10,000 to 25,000 patients, and in Europe between 16,000 and 40,000. And having qualified for the Orphan drug designation does grant some certain development benefits to Saniona, including some tax credits, some elimination of certain FDA license application fees. But I guess most importantly, what it does, it grants us 7 years of market exclusivity following the approval on the market.
What's next for Tesomet? I understand it's indicated for HO, but are there other conditions that you plan on testing it for as well in the future?
Yep, absolutely. So great question. So we just talked about, we conducted a phase 2 study in hypothalamic obesity, and we are about to start a phase 2B, which is the next clinical study for hypothalamic obesity, and that will be started in the second half of this year. Another indication that we are pursuing is an indication called Prader-Willi Syndrome, or PWS. Unlike hypothalamic obesity, which is an acquired disease, as we discussed, PWS is actually a genetic disease. And PWS is characterized by typically hyperphagia, which is this kind of uncontrollable desire to eat all the time, disturbances to metabolic functions, and basically everything that you would expect as a result of morbid obesity, which is typical to Prader-Willi syndrome. In PWS, similar to HO, we are also moving forward to the next clinical study, which is also a phase 2B trial, which we also intend to initiate in the second half of this year. So basically 2 phase 2B trials will be initiated with Tesomet over the next few months.
Give our listeners a website where we can go and learn more about HO and about Tesomet in these trials.
Absolutely. So I think the best website would be just to go to our company website at Saniona.com for any additional information.
And that's spelled SANIONA.com, correct?
Exactly.
Great. Well, I appreciate you joining us here on the program this morning for this brief discussion. Thank you so much for giving us this information, and I'm hoping that we'll speak again in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Mr. Rami Levin. He's president and CEO of Saniona. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/healthprofessionalradio.